Podcasting 101 continues with your title, your branding, and format for your podcast. Welcome to Always Listening. I am Joel Sharpton, CEO of Pro Podcasting Services, and I am always listening. Today, we're continuing our Podcasting 101 series and talking about your title, your branding, and the format. And it's all kind of a piece. It's the continuation of our Episode 0 series where we talked about the topic that you're going to be focusing on and the angle that you're approaching that topic in your show itself. We're going to move on to the next step. The first step, some might say. Confucius had a classic quote that one of my college professors like to regale us with at the beginning of a course. First, we must have a rectification of names. So why is a title so important in the first place? Well, it is the primary way that your show will be searched for or discovered by new listeners. Yes, your name will be important. We'll put it in all the right places, and you'll be able to help people find your show by searching for your own name. Yes, the names of your guests will be available in the title of the episodes themselves, and that'll help people find your show for the first time as they search for some creator or business owner or entrepreneur that they already know. Now they're on your show as well. Hey, I like this host. I like the way this guy runs a podcast. Let's get more of this. But the primary way that people are going to find your show is by searching for the name itself. So let's get a good one. First and foremost, you want your title to be as brief as possible. You want to get right to the point and in as few words as possible, describe the show that people are going to be listening to on an ongoing basis, or at least you're going to be asking them to do so. If you already have a public persona, either a brand, a business, a product that people know you for, if there is any way to tie this podcast to that brand, business, or product, which, as we discussed in the first episode, there really should be an easy way to do so. If you're going to tie it to that brand, business, or product, then you need to include the name of that brand, business, or product in the name of your podcast. If everybody knows you for the My Big Event, then My Big Event ought to be in the name of your podcast. You also want to try to make sure that your name isn't one that's completely saturated in the podcast directories already. The two that matter are Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Depending upon whose stats you're looking at and which quarter you're looking at stats for, either Apple Podcasts or Spotify is the biggest directory. The other one is number 2, and between the two of them, they cover about 90% of all podcast listening or downloads. If you search one of your proposed titles in Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you don't get a single hit for another show that already uses that name, you found your title. What about if all your proposed titles are taken already? Well, check those shows. Are they all still in production? Are they in your same industry or niche? If the answer to one of those questions is no, I wouldn't worry about it if there's only one out there. However, if you've picked a title where there are 4, 5, 6 podcasts that immediately pop up into results with that same title or an incredibly similar one, I'd try to look elsewhere. What if you don't have a business, a brand, or a product name, or that product, business, or brand name isn't the kind of name that you can just stick into the title of a podcast? Here's the things that I look for when I'm helping a client create a title or creating a title for one of my own shows. Is there a word or phrase that you use consistently in your marketing, your messaging, or your personal life? Does that word or phrase apply to this podcast or project? Does that word or phrase already exist as a podcast that is actively produced in the Apple Podcast directory or in Spotify? Can you find yourself selling a book with this title, word, or phrase? If so, that's probably a good podcast title. I hear you already. Joel, I'm drawing a complete blank. I don't have a product. I don't have a brand. I don't have a business. I just want to start this podcast to begin to build my audience and to establish my own experience and expertise. What am I going to call this podcast? Unlike in Terminator 2, this is a time to let the machines work for us. Let's try ChatGPT. All right, so we're going to go in here to ChatGPT. I'm using 4, but ChatGPT 3.5 would work just as well if you want to stick with the free version for yourself. Here's what we're going to do. Help me name a podcast. My show is about the mortgage industry and will feature both top performing loan officers and real estate agents as well. My name is Joel Sharpton. I live and work in the Denver, Colorado area. What else might we want to put in there? Please give me 10 options for my title and give me 10 options for my title. Let's start there. So let's see what ChatGPT can do. Oh, right off the top, Mile High Mortgages with Joel Sharpton. Denver Mortgage Mastery. I like that one. Rocky Mountain Real Estate and Mortgages. The Lone Ranger, Denver's Home Connection. Joel Sharpton's Milestone Mortgages. Peak Performance, Denver Home Experts. Oh, I like that one. The Mortgage Mile with Joel Sharpton. Altitude Lending, Denver's Property Podcast. The Home Summit, Denver's Real Estate and Mortgage Show. And Property Pioneers, Denver's Top Loan Officers and Agents. So first of all, some really, really good ones to start with there, but you could also regenerate the response. Denver Lending Diaries, I like that one. Elevating Mortgages with Joel Sharpton. The Sharpton Show, Mastering Mortgages. Boy, that was an interesting bird. I don't know if you guys are getting the birds in the background here for me, but that was a really interesting tweet from that one. So now what we would do here, my suggestion would be, let's see, we get 2, 3 that we like. Elevating Mortgages with Joel Sharpton. High Altitude Home Loans. I really like that one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up the Podcasts app. And we're going to search for High Altitude Home Loans. That's the one that I liked best, I think. High Altitude Home Loans. I like these results so far. The Mile Higher podcast, the Mile Higher podcast is as close as we're really getting there. I like this a lot. All right, let's go look at one of our other favorites here. Property Pioneers, Denver's Top Pros. Property Pioneers. That feels like something. Commercial Property Pioneers, Black Banner Podcast. Backwoods Bow Hunter. All right, so you've got Real Estate Pioneers. There you go. That's one. Property Hub. Commercial Property Pioneers. You've got a few there, but nothing directly on that idea. So there you go. Easily in just a couple of minutes, you can use the free web version, or as I'm doing here, MacGPT, which is a downloadable app that allows you to access ChatGPT right there on your laptop or desktop computer, your Mac. You can even actually get it from the menu bar up here. You can kind of click and just immediately start a response to ChatGPT. Very, very cool stuff. But in just a couple of minutes with ChatGPT, we got 10 options there. You can regenerate multiple times. You can even use it iteratively. So we could say, I like elevating mortgages. Let's get more titles along those lines. Ascending Home Loans. There you go. Mortgage Masterminds. Elevate your mortgage experience. Loan Liftoff with Joel Sharpton. Loan Liftoff with Joel Sharpton. Let's look at that. Loan Liftoff. Folks, if you're a mortgage officer, this is a good title. Okay, Liftoff. Business Inspiration and Growth The Liftoff Show, podcast hosted by Tim, I'm going to butcher your last name, so I'm not going to say it. Lone Liftoff is available, folks. That's a good title. That's a very good title. All right. You iterate on the ones that you like. You go back and forth. You go to the podcast app. You go to Spotify. You search those titles that come up through your conversation with ChatGPT. And all of a sudden, you can hone in 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You could hone in on a masterful title that would be just perfect for your new podcast. Or if you're looking to rebrand your own podcast. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast, I've got the link to the video in the show notes. So please go click it and check out that interaction with ChatGPT to see just how we walked you through it and how you can do that for your own show. But once you've chosen your title, what's next? It's all about branding, folks. You're going to need a logo. You're going to need a banner for your YouTube channel. You're going to need a profile image that matches your branding for the podcast to go on your Instagram and Facebook profiles, maybe even your LinkedIn, depending upon the nature of your show itself. All of that stuff comes from the title. Once you know what you're going to call this, the rest of it should flow out. If you already have a business, product, a brand, then use your current branding. Colors that you're using, the text or font that you're using, use those in your podcast branding if possible. So that once you put them all on the same website, once people are searching you through Google and getting all these different results, they'll feel like they're of the same piece. Personally, I go to Canva when I want to do these sorts of things. They've got great templates to start with. You can import your own brand style guide, including the fonts that you want to use, the sizing for the different text, whether it be heading, subheading, body, as well as imagery and colors. All of that stuff can be loaded in and standardized so that anytime you're making a template or working on a design, those brand guidelines will be met and followed. Of course, I would strongly suggest, if you've got the budget for it, to hire this done. If you don't already have a great logo or a brand mark that you use personally, this is the opportunity to get something from the start that is solid, something that you're going to be excited to share, something that'll not only work for your podcast, but can be applied to your personal profiles and your own business or brand. Finally, let's talk briefly about format. The nature of your podcast is right here, in between the branding and the title, and the software and the hardware that we're going to talk about in the next episode. You've got to decide what sort of show is it going to be. Are you going to do direct address to the camera, like I'm doing here? Are you going to do solo courses where you lecture on the topics that you're already an expert on? Or are you going to have on guests? If so, just one at a time? Or is it going to be a panel discussion where you're just one of the many participants? We're going to talk about those software and hardware options that format will dictate next week. But in the meantime, I want you to really give this some consideration. What sort of podcast do you want to have? You know your title now. You know what the topic is. So how are you going to bring that topic to your audience? I'll talk you through the hardware and software necessary to do whatever format you're looking at on the next episode of Always Listening. Until then, I've been Joel Sharpton, and I am always listening.
Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough. Yeah, I know I ain't seen it all, but I've seen enough.
Always Listening is a proud member of the Two Guys and a Rogue Network. You can find all of our past episodes, including more than 100 podcast reviews, at alwayslisteningpod.com in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. For help on your podcast, visit propodcastingservices.com. Our theme song is Enough from Bethany Rayner.